Welcome back to Learning PHP. Now in today's tutorial we're going to be looking at control structures. So far we've basically covered data types, variables and constants. This time we're going to take a look at control structures. This is quite a big topic, so we're going to break it down into a couple of tutorials. Now for today's tutorial we're going to take a look at conditional statements. Now a conditional statement controls the flow of an application similar to how a circuit would work. There's two key types of conditional statement in PHP, if and switch. And I've left a couple of links to the official documentation in the bottom of the slide. If you're curious about where to access the slide, look in the description box down below and you should be able to see everything. So, like I said, it's very much like a circuit. So a circuit to begin with starts with a current. A current will flow in one direction. But a current doesn't always have to follow a linear path. There can be, for instance, something like a switch in place where you would have multiple outcomes. So if you were to take the concept of a circuit with a light on it, you'd either have two sort of outputs. You'd have light on or light off. Now I'm not sure if you can see the bottom bit of light off just here because it's being covered by my video, but that basically just says light off. So like I said, this can be controlled by a switch. If the switch is on, the light is on. If the switch is off, the light is off. And this, like I said, will flow in a single direction. So when it's on, it will flow, and basically, if it's off, the light will essentially be off. If it's on, the light will be on. It's a very simple concept, and that is basically how simple a conditional statement is. It's either on or it's off. So how can we apply this to code? Let's take an if statement and apply it to the diagram. So let's first start by looking at an if statement. So an if statement can essentially be broken down into three parts. You have your condition. Now the condition is essentially what is highlighted in orange here. Now all we're saying is, does today equal date of birth? Now this is a way to simply check if it's someone's birthday or not. Now, you probably would want something a little bit more specific than that, but this is a very simple concept. Now, the sort of structure or syntax around it is you would start with the keyword if. It's essentially like a function call with an open bracket. Then you would have the conditional part in it. This is where the on or off comes. It's either true or it's false. So if the first part, if your condition is true, you have a positive outcome. So that's what's highlighted here in green. So everything between the if and the else sort of statement here is our positive outcome. So after the conditional statement, we have an open curly bracket, our positive outcome, and a close curly bracket. Now everything within those two curly braces is essentially our positive outcome. For our negative outcome, we use the keyword identifier else. So basically, if today is not equal to the date of birth, else have our negative outcome. So this echo another day is our negative outcome. But let's have a little look at that within the circuit itself. So we've taken our conditional statement here, and we've applied it to the circuit. Now I'm just going to disable my face for a second. So as you can see here, I've broken it up into smaller sections or smaller bytes. So today is our input, which is more specifically our current. So this can be any driving force or anything, and it doesn't always have to be your first parameter. Just think about the application running as a whole, or what's driving that part of your application, should I say. So in this case, we already have some finite state. So in theory, date of birth would be finite because you something doesn't change. Your positive and negative outcomes are finite, but the only variable income is your basically the date today. So today is coming in, and it's first going to hit the if statement, and then it's going to decide from there if the date is equal to the date of birth, have the positive outcome, else have the negative outcome. So in the context of a negative outcome, we have today equaling 2018 December 06. We're first hitting our if. Now if we want this to be positive, it needs to match 2018 December 06, but it doesn't. It matches 2008. Well, basically it's 2018 December 13. So that won't match, therefore we hit the else condition and have the negative outcome. So we're just simply outputting another day. If in the case of it matching, so you'd have 2018 December 13 is equal to 2018 December 13. So we do have a match, therefore that we have the positive outcome being happy birthday. So what about switch statements? A switch statement does essentially the same thing, just a different syntax. Here's a previous example, side by side, a switch equivalent. Now obviously, like we had previously, we had the today to begin with, so that's kind of our current, should I say. That's the variant that will change. It'll impact our finite, which will impact our finite circuit. So the current comes in today. Does it match the date of birth? If so, echo happy birthday. Now, essentially this case is basically just stating today equal date of birth. Typically a switch is a integer based control mechanism, and it shouldn't really have strings in, but PHP does allow quite a different variance on a switch statement. Unlike a lot of other programming languages such as Java and C, will be very resilient to very resistant on allowing using anything but an integer based value. So obviously like an enum would also apply. Instead of the curly parentheses as well, we have a colon to start the positive outcome, and then we have the keyword or the identifier break to have the to close the outcome. If you wanted an else, so if it doesn't match any of the criteria, this basically a switch statement can have multiple cases. So for instance, you could have switch case date of birth and then happy birthday break, and then you could have case date of Christmas, echo happy Christmas, and so forth. But if it doesn't match any of the cases, it defaults to the default keyword and then just echoes out another day and breaks it. Theory, you don't have to run this last break because it will terminate the switch statement anyway. It's just a little bit of good practice. Now that's all I'm going to cover in regards to the slide. What I will show you now is a little bit of code. So we are just leaving off from our last tutorial. I've created a new Docker container for this tutorial as well. Just a reminder, if you have any other Docker containers running, either change the port they're running on, and to change the port you change this first number here. So for instance, if I didn't want to use port 80, I want to use port 8088, I'd simply state that, then start the Docker container. If you are getting errors with your Docker container, make sure that you check what ports are currently in use or what listening on. If it conflicts with the port that you want to serve the content from, it won't run. If you're having other issues with your Docker container, especially with Windows, I simply advise you to click on the little icon in the bottom right hand corner, right click on the Docker image, and then just click restart. And that will restart the Docker container and should fix most of the issues that you might be having. Now I'm going to return my ugly head back into the frame, and we're first going to kick up the Docker container. So if I just run docker-compose up, it should kick up our Docker container. So if I exit this and open up localhost, we should have our entry page to our Docker container. So let's go and create a bit of code, shall we? Now, I've created another index file, so index.php, to basically give some examples. Now, I'm going to use the example that we just covered, the date of birth thing. So we're going to say that today is equal to 2018 dash, I think it's actually the 7th today. Sorry, the 12th of the 7th. And I'm going to state the date of birth is equal to 2018 dash, obviously a date of birth would be a date, something you want to have just a specific date within a year, not the year as well, because obviously a date of birth would only indicate that that's the day you are being born rather than your birthday. So the date of birth would it be in this case 12-13. So if we now do an if statement, so to do a conditional if statement, we start by the keyword if, then open brackets, then today. We can use multiple operators at this point. I'm just going to cover the basics, which is going to be equals. So 2 equals is equal to. Now, I know that some people who already know PHP will state PHP does support triple equals. Yes, correct, it does. Which is an explicit match. Now, an explicit match will force the data type and, in the case of strings, case sensitivity. But again, I might leave operators for a separate tutorial. But in this case, we're just stating that today is equal to the date of birth. And if it is, we're just simply going to echo happy birthday. And now we've basically, that's our positive result or positive outcome. And now we just need a negative outcome. Now in theory you don't have to have a negative outcome. The negative outcome could be nothing, which is what we have here. But if we do want a negative outcome defined, we can simply state else and then echo another day. So if I open up the browser and test that, we basically get another day because it's not matching the date of birth. If we want it to match the date of birth, we can simply state that today is the 13th, the date of birth is also the 13th, and if I go back and refresh this, happy birthday. Okay, if statements in PHP do have a different operator to a few other programming languages. Now, I've shown you the else, but PHP also has else if. Now you're probably thinking, but you can do that in other programming languages. Yeah, typically you can. In other languages you'd have an else space if and then your second condition. So for instance, this case would be true. PHP actually just supports else if as a single identifier. So you could have multiple conditions. So it also has to match the conditions in the sequence that they execute. So, pardon me. Sorry, I've got a bit of a dry throat and I don't have any fluids with me. So if we wanted to say, for instance, match Christmas, we could just simply state Christmas is equal to 2018-1225. So first thing we're going to do is check to see if today is equal to the date of birth. If so, wish someone a happy birthday. Else, if today is equal to Christmas, and then we're just simply going to wish echo happy Christmas. And if it doesn't match either of those conditions, it's going to fall back to just being another day. So at the moment, it will match happy birthday. It won't try and execute anything else apart from that. So if I now change today's date to be the 25th, it'll try and match this condition, fail because it's incorrect. Then try and match this condition, which is equal to Christmas, today being equal to Christmas. It will match it, echo out happy Christmas, and then terminate the sequence of events. So if I show that now, it should just say happy Christmas. Now, that's basically an if statement in a nutshell. You can have things like removing these parentheses if you want to, but you can only have one line after the conditional statement that will basically be incorporated. And what I mean by that is if, say for instance, this last else, we have echo another day, echo a second line. In theory, when you're looking at this, you'd think it wouldn't hit either of those two echoes, but because we're already matching happy Christmas, it won't execute this echo, but it will execute this one. So if I refresh the page, we get a second line displaying. and that's because it's not encapsulated within the fail criteria. So if I now wrap it in curly parenthesis, refresh it, it's now part of the negative result. Okay, so that is pretty much a if statement in a nutshell. Switch statements, very similar. So instead of if, you start with the keyword switch. Now you have usually a topic with a switch statement or a subject that you want to match against. In this case, it's going to be today. And again, use the open curly braces, but this time it's to encapsulate all the results. But you define the results as part of the switch statement. So you will switch on the, so for instance, you read it like you would English. You would switch today on the case date of birth. So that would be typed out like switch today, case, date of birth, and then to basically state that I want to do something, if it matches this, would be a colon, and then say have echo happy birthday. And then to terminate the success of this match, just simply state break with a semicolon at the end. Now if I comment this out here, the if statement, it won't print anything out because it's not matched anything. So if I want it to print something out, if it doesn't match anything, we can simply state default, then echo another day. And then, like I mentioned before, you don't have to have a break here because it's the terminating point of the statement anyway, but it's good practice just to have one. So we've got another day. Well, what happens if we want it to match Christmas? Well, we could throw as many cases into a switch statement as we want. So we could also throw in Christmas into this. Don't forget to terminate the successful matching or successful output. And then in this case, we're going to have echo happy Christmas. And in this case, instead of another day, it should just say happy Christmas. So there we have it. Those are conditional statements within PHP. I'm going to probably cover loops in my next tutorial. I've started a presentation on that already. I hope you found this useful. If you do have any comments, feedback, or anything, please leave them in the comment box down below. If you're looking for any links to any of the references that I used within this tutorial, again, check the description box down below. If you did find this useful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, it would be much appreciated. But until next time, I will see you around.